Good evening, everyone. Any other members in the queue? Okay. All right. All right. Well, I mean, we'll get started. We have a 5:30 start time. Members need to start getting here. So, okay, welcome to our May 11th, 2022 Caucus and Work session, where we go through our agenda and talk about the upcoming meeting. Just for record, members present, Ballerin, Zamer, Keegan, Hoey, Clark, Love, Council President Ellis is also here. I'm here, Fourth Ward Council Member Kimbrough, along with our staff, Clerk Danielle Gillespie, Legislative Aide Ethan Samuel, and our Research Council, J.R. Pichardo, as well as Corp Counsel Brett Williams. This is our work session. We tonight, what I wanted to do is we have on the upcoming agenda 2 ordinances by the school district relating to sales of property. It's 56 North Lark Street and 596 North Pearl Street. There's a request. They had reached out to Corp Counsel a little while back saying that they needed to get these transfers done in short order. And the reason being is they're doing the work at these different locations, but I guess there's a rule with NIMO that they won't break ground or work unless the individual owns the property. And at this point, the district doesn't. So what I have here is an attorney, Mr. Chris Honeywell, along with some other folks that are related to this project, to explain to us what it is and why they need us to do this in short order. And we'll, with the hopes that we'll move forward with this at our upcoming meeting with unanimous consent, and introduce it and pass it on the same night. And so they're here to make their pitch to us and explain the need for this. And so we'll get going on that. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Honeywell.
Thank you very much, Councilman Kimbrough. I appreciate that and the opportunity to speak with the Common Council here today. I'm also joined by Rich Peckham of CS Arch. He's the lead architect for the district on a variety of capital projects. As the councilman indicated, and this is specific to the ordinance he introduced, 14.52.22, which involves 2 parcels of property. I'm going to provide a quick background, which I think is relevant here. Prior to 1972, the school system was operated by the city of Albany. In 1972, the legislature divested that, created the city school district of Albany, and noted in the legislation that any property owned by the city of Albany, operated by school authorities for educational purposes, including school sites, school buildings, equipment, and funds, all goes over to the new entity, City School District of Albany. In a perfect world, at that time, some deeds would have been filed and I wouldn't have to be talking to you today. But what has come to light, first in the early 90s, then again in the early 2000s, is that the district doesn't have deeds that demonstrate ownership of these particular properties. There's about 10 properties that were dealt with in 2006 through a boundary line agreement, although we still need to do the quick claim deeds for that. So that's an issue that I'm working with your corporation counsel on. But the specific issue related to the 2 parcels in that ordinance are at North Albany Middle School, which is connected to the former North Albany YMCA. The district has a deed for the YMCA because they purchased that property from the YMCA. The district is doing some capital project work at both locations for the connected buildings to improve and upgrade them. There is independent electrical service in each building. The goal is to consolidate the electrical service, upgrade it, and provide better service to the students in that community and in that building. But the problem we've run into is that National Grid will not consolidate the electric service until the properties are consolidated. We cannot consolidate the properties because what we've learned is that even though the district is listed as the owner on the assessment roll and probably has been for decades, we don't actually have a deed from the city to the school district to own those two particular parcels upon which North Albany Middle School, formerly PS20, sits. So our ask here is, number one, for the city to transfer ownership of those properties, again, which I think both entities have operated for decades under that being the assumption. But that way we can get two additional deeds, combine it with the existing one we have, and then we'll satisfy National Grid's requirements. And I'd invite Rich Peckham to jump in here and discuss the timeline and why this is such an urgent issue with respect to this type of work typically being done in the summer. And we're looking at, I think, a mid-June start for this work. So we are under a bit of a time crunch.
Yes, thank you, Chris. We've been under construction at the North Albany Middle School for a year now. And with the final parts coming in for them to occupy this school come September of 2022 as the third comprehensive middle school in the district. To be able to do that, we need to upgrade the electric service to the building, as Chris had mentioned. And to do that, because National Grid will not permit multiple electric services to an individual building. And that's the reason we need to consolidate those electric services. And the electrician needs to start as soon as school is out to be able to get all that work done. And National Grid also has their timelines that they need to get their work started and scheduled to be able to do that. And they're hesitant to progress too quickly with that until there's actually the consolidation of the properties so that they can consolidate the services there. Without the electric service upgraded this summer, the school will not be able to open come September. They would only be able to continue using it with the current capacity, which does not meet their plans in the feeder program. The school district has just implemented this past spring to go forward for the next year. So without being able to get this electric service completed, it would throw the district's plans for the next school year in turmoil. So that is part of the reason why it's such a time-sensitive thing. At first, we thought that just having the letter that was presented by Chris's firm to National Grid would have taken care of everything. But then when they went to a different department, they said, no, we have to have the properties consolidated. So that's where we're at right now and why we're here tonight.
And speaking specifically to the time frame, I understand this is on the agenda for your May 16th meeting. We've sort of been speaking with Corporation Counsel, and if approved, it would take a couple weeks to get the deeds filed, and then it would take a couple more weeks for us to get those consolidated into one single parcel. So we're running right up against our mid-June anticipated start of that specific electric work. So we are in a tight time frame. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today on this particular issue and explain why that timeline is an urgency and why it couldn't wait for, I think your January 6th meeting was maybe the following one, or whenever the next meeting was. January. Ooh, let's not work backwards there. We would not be able to wait until June 6th, as that would seriously jeopardize the ability for the school district to open on time at the beginning of the next school year.
Okay, so before opening up for questions, so we have two ordinances before us. So the one for the 56 North Lark Street isn't exigent. It's not time sensitive.
It is as well. I was going to get to that one next. I'm happy to speak on that before questions, if that's the way you would. I'm happy to talk on that one as well.
Yeah. Can you just talk about that one also?
So that is Edmund O'Neill It's property owned by the city of Albany. This is outside of the legislation I talked about back in the 70s. This is property owned by the city of Albany. Back in 2000, it was leased to a charter school. They constructed the building. That building has since been purchased by the City School District of Albany. So we own the building. The city owns the property upon which it sits. The district is also doing some capital improvement projects there, specifically playgrounds. And what they're looking to do is on the property that they lease from the city, put in play space for the students of that building. We think it would be cleanest and best for the district just to own the property, as it's no longer a charter school. I think for at least 7 or 8 years has been that way. So the district would like to own that property so that they can proceed with the capital improvements to the green space of that property. It follows a similar urgent timeline in the world of school district capital projects. You do what you can while the students are there, but as soon as they're let out for the summer, that's the prime time to get work done in and around the buildings. So we're looking for a similar, hopefully quick turnaround so that as soon as class is let out in mid-June, shovels can be in the dirt, getting that play space ready for the students for a timely opening in the fall.
Okay, so thank you. And just for the record, we're further joined by council members Farrell, Adams, Love, and Romero. I believe they weren't there previously. So with that, any members with questions, just kind of Ms. Zamer?
Hi, thank you for filling us in on this. Of course, I'm totally supportive, and I anything that's going to delay the North Albany middle school opening is just kind of terrifying. So my only question is why the work has been going on for a year, and it's just now that we're all realizing that this consolidation needs to occur. I'm just wondering why this wasn't known months ago.
That's a great question. At the time, our firm sent a letter to National Grid detailing everything I informed you of. That was sufficient for National Grid at the time. And we thought, okay, great, we can clean up, again, the multitude of property issues that are going on. And then it was only recently that National Grid sort of put the brakes on it and said, nope, we can't do what we thought we were going to do without you owning a single consolidated property. So with respect to, so that's a great question. With respect to all the property issues with the City School District of Albany and the City of Albany, my goal over this calendar year is to clean up everything so that we don't need to come back to you with this sense of urgency in the future, because I obviously don't want to abuse that process. Some of you may remember it was an issue with the high school with the capital project about 4, 5, 6 years ago. Again, the district, unbeknownst to the district, didn't have a deed for the building, so we needed that. And again, it was National Grid who raised the issue because they need the deed and proof of ownership for easements and the like. So I apologize for the sense of urgency here. We thought the issue was taken care of and not an urgent matter, and then National Grid told us otherwise.
Thank you. I understand. And you're confident, or is the electrical, vendor confident that with the passage of these ordinances, everything will move along and we will be able to get the work done for September?
Yes, we are, and I've spoken with Corporation Counsel, and they've also indicated there could potentially be a letter of intent, so that way we can get something to National Grid sooner while the deeds are being filed and consolidated, and we're pretty confident that will be sufficient for National Grid to do the background planning development work that they need to do so that we can, in mid-June, progress on schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Zamer. Ms. Farrell?
Thank you. I just wanted to, having been on when I was on the school board, and it's such a pleasure to be in a meeting with Rich again. Hello, Rich, and you too, Chris. I had to do it was like super deja vu. what a pleasure. So there was always kind of, because the Albany Arbor Hill Community Center was there, there's like a lot of intertwined pieces to it. So I guess I just wanted to kind of bring that up, and see, because it really is like threading a needle with it. And is this, if you could just walk through where we are with that, because I have not been deeply involved in it as I was 5 years ago, but it was just, it was an example of why it's a great concept, perhaps, to have two different municipalities share a property, that it actually wasn't great in practice, because you have two different municipalities that have two different sets of rules and all sorts of different things. And it was just incredibly complicated. So you don't have to go into a deeply in-depth thing, but I think it'd be great to have a little bit more background on that, at least from my perspective.
That's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. I know there were the conversations with Edmund O'Neill and the district taking ownership of that property actually started over 3 years ago now. A sort of rough agreement had been arrived at. I've spoken with Corporation Counsel. Let's get this across the finish line here, especially now with the urgency of looking to improve the play space. And the districts, again, I've spoken briefly with a couple members of the board, but I'm not able to speak with them until their next meeting on the 19th. But we have a tentative agreement that I firmly believe they will be on board with and supportive of, that allows the continued use by the community center. The draft lease we have goes through November 30th of 2099. So it still supports that initial 99-year lease that the city and the charter school had for the community center to remain there. So the district, by taking ownership of the underlying property, is not going to have any impact in terms of not looking to boot the community center out. There will still be a lease agreement in place between the city and the city school district and the City of Albany IDA to allow the community center to continue as it has been doing for, I think, at least the last 20 years, using that property for community center purposes. So that will remain. Nothing's looking to be changed. And as part of the transfer from the city to the school district of the underlying land, we would execute this lease agreement to keep that relationship going.
Okay, excellent. And there's not an expectation of an increase in cost, not that I would expect the school district to suddenly be like, score, now we can charge rent. But I just to make sure that community center is not, there will be a cost associated in that lease agreement, I'm expecting.
Yes, there is. And in the current draft that I received from Marisa earlier today, just looking at the annual rent under the lease would be $40,000 per year, with a 1.5% increase each July 1st for each year.
Okay, and that's something that the city and the community center are comfortable with?
Based on my conversations with Corporation Counsel, I believe so. Again, the background here is this agreement was really put together about 3 years ago, and there was just one sticking point issue, and it was a termination clause that the city requested a termination clause. A mutual termination clause was included. That came to be a sticking point, was my understanding. So we're willing to remove that. Marisa removed it, sent that back to me. So my understanding is that with Corporation Counsel in the city, that those are acceptable terms of the draft that I'm going to be discussing with the board next week.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like over $3,000 a month seems expensive to me. But I also do not own a community center. So thank you for articulating that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Ms. Romero?
Thank you. I was also kind of concerned by that number. I'm not sure if the council member for that ward or can like speak on this issue, or if the community center, if we can get like the leader of the community center or some type of advocate from the community center, just to make sure that they're okay with that agreement before we decide to vote on this. And Mr. Honeywell, nothing against your representation. I just think it would be great for us to have an explicit response from them before we make a decision on this, if that's possible.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I'm sure Corporation Counsel can reach out to you to explain what's been going on your side of the table.
Thank you for that, Ms. Romero. So any other questions, comments? And I'll commit to talking to Corp Counsel and trying to figure out from the city side if that number's okay. I'll do it before the meeting and try to give enough lead time for folks to digest what is out there. So with that, so thank you, Mr. Honeywell and Mr. Peckham, for the information. We will move ahead with our meeting, but just for members, just understand that in order for us to do this in short order, we have to do it by unanimous consent, and so let's just be clear on that. So it's going to be introed. It doesn't have to be emceed. I'll introduce it, and we'll call for a vote, and if members are okay with it, we'll move ahead with it. So this is.
Thank you very much, Councilman Kimbrough, and to the rest of the council. We really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and speak with you today. And again, I will reiterate, it is my goal to get all the property issues cleared up this year so that we don't have to do this down the road.
Thank you, sir.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question? I'm really sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you know how much the school district was paying the city for the lease of the land?
I'm not sure there's, I don't have that number in front of me. I don't believe there was a fee associated with that lease. What I can say relative to the documents I see on my system here, there are multiple drafts going back and forth with the lease agreement where the rent amount sort of started at 0, was at 55 at one point, and then ended at the 40. So my understanding is that there have been negotiations on that. So my assumption, which again, I'll also look to confirm with Corporation Counsel, is that the document they sent me today as the final was contemplated and considered on their end. So.
Yeah, and I will definitely, I've already shot out a couple of emails and notes. But I guess my only concern is if we're signing it over to the school district and then have to pay $40,000 a year in rent, like that's a significant loss. And we're all in this together. Like I'm thrilled for, and I know how complicated this is. I love that you want to solve this problem because it's been such a huge problem for so many years, but I know that the city rarely charges rent and also usually hands over land, which I fully support, but that seems expensive. But I'm circling back internally because if that's something that the city and the community center are comfortable with, then we're good.
And my understanding, again, the community center usage is primarily almost exclusively inside the building, the pool space, the gym space,
and
not the property outside.
There absolutely needs to be an outdoor space for the kids there. 110%. It is not okay that there isn't one. So I have to say, I really would love to see that there. It's been needed the entire time that's been a school. So I'm highly supportive of that, and highly supportive of this. I just want to make sure that we're not putting a community center in a situation where it's that's a lot of money every year. So.
Absolutely, I understand the point, and I will also follow up with Marisa, and we'll get any information to the Common Council before your meeting that we can, so you have all of that cleared up.
Thank you.
Okay, and just real, so Ms. Farrell, so your question had, you were advocating or saying that the community center should have usage of outside space, right? Is that
No,
what
I'm
you were-
talking about them paying. So this is, the land was owned, is currently owned by the city. And it absolutely, it causes issues for the school district because they own the building and not the land, and I totally understand them wanting to own the land beneath it. My concern is that they will have to, it kind of switches. So the city owned the land, and I believe just let the school district, there wasn't rent attached to it, but I could be wrong on that point. And now since the school district owns the land, this community center would have to pay a fee. Now, it could be that the community center had to pay a fee when the city owned the land. I don't know that either. So I don't want to have it come off as if, it could be just keeping something going on, but I think it's important for us to know what fees are associated moving forward, especially for a 99-year lease. Because we don't want to put a community center in a situation where if they weren't paying that fee before, that they now have to come up with figuring out how to pay for that fee. And I'm sure that it's all been discussed. I think for us, if it's something that we're voting on, we should absolutely know every part of that. I personally don't like to vote on things that I don't know the ins and outs of, and on leadership, I don't like to put my colleagues in that situation either. So.
Yeah, thank you. I was just looking for clarification. And so before Mr. Ballard and Mr. Honeywell, so you understand that we need this information, correct?
Yes, I understand that question. I will make some immediate calls right after this to try to get you the information of what the current pays are and how that 40,000 figure was arrived at between the city and the school district 2 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ballerin.
Yeah, I guess my concern is if we are not charging the school district anything, and now the school district's asking for us to have to pony up, I got some issues with that personally, because at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that are paying, no matter who it is. So I think we really need to make sure we get that figured out. Because I think we're already very good partners in a lot of things that have to do with the school district. And sometimes I think we need to do the best we can to be fair partners in our interactions when we're looking at different issues that come up. And I'm just going to bring up dismissals and issues that have been going on with dismissals. And we have always covered the bill for additional police shifts during dismissals. And I think, that's part of our responsibility and part of our partnership as, two different governmental agencies that are working together for our residents and our students. So I just want to make sure that whenever we're looking to go into these partnerships, that they're fair partnerships where the burden is being shared equally, and that the consideration is being focused on the individuals that we're trying to benefit. So, so hearing that kind of brings up some other sore points regarding some other partnerships that we have. But I'm really hoping we can get this cleared up, and I'm also hoping we can get some of those other issues cleared up as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ballerin, Ms. Romero, and then Mr. Hoey, and then we'll close out.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Honeywell, for coming to us and answering these questions, because this is like really our only opportunity to engage you in this way, because we'll be voting on Monday. I just wanted to add to the list of information that you could possibly retrieve, because it sounds like you are going to have a more direct line and a more immediate line than we would after this meeting. If we could also get explicit confirmation from the community center director or leader, that they are also okay with this agreement. I'm not sure who that is, but I would love some type of approval from them, if that's possible. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Or just like how they feel about this. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, how they feel. I think the administration over there is the city. It's department. It's a city department. So
Okay.
I think it would be
The community center.
It's the City of Albany Industrial Development Agency that the lease is with. So we can certainly reach out to them, and I can get those answers with Marisa and the IDA as to, again, my assumption that these conversations occurred and the number was previously agreed to.
Okay.
But I can make sure I can confirm that for the Common Council, because again, I don't want to misstate anything.
Thank you.
right. Thank you, Mr. Hoey, and then Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you again. Councilman Ballerin brought up a point about partnerships, and I reached out 2 times to the school board and the superintendent. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and we wanted to talk about violence, and nobody's gotten back to me. Monday night, I'll remember that. So maybe you can get word back that, I was waiting for a response to my 2 emails. Thank you.
And I apologize, Councilman. Who did you reach out to? That part cut out.
The superintendent and the school board.
Okay. I will make sure that you get a response.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. I'm sorry that I missed the first part of this meeting, and I just want to voice that the property that we're talking about, that it was formerly the Arbor Hill Community Center, and one of my concerns is that growing up, that community center served my whole family, and we had access to that full building, and since it was turned into a school, our access to the community center part has been limited, with school use. So my just from what I'm hearing, my concern is the community losing access to a space that is been a valuable asset to many. And I'm a district employee, so I wear both hats, but my concern is definitely about the potential for the community to lose time in that space. So that's something that I just wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
And Councilman, I appreciate you pointing that out. What I would say with respect to that is that the charter school 20 years ago constructed the building. The school district took over the lease with the community center. So for at least as long as the city school district has absorbed that lease, there's always been restrictions on the usage around the academic calendar and your school days, just for understandable reasons. We can't have community members coming in, to a pool where a gym class is currently engaged. But there is no intent, there's no goal, there's nothing in here in the lease agreement that's looking to push out the community center, further restrict any of the usage. And so the goal here, and I know the board would like me to express this directly, the board wants a good community partnership with the city. They want the community center to continue for as long as the community center needs to be there to continue to utilize the building. And again, I agree, it's the same tax base that's paying city taxes and school taxes. So if they can get to use the property together and share that, that's the goal.
Well, thank you for that answer. And like I said, when you hear a cost associated with for me, that's the part that is scary, because eventually that cost is deemed too costly. And then the next thing you know, we have zero access to the building. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Honeywell, Mr. Peckham, for the information and for being here. Look forward to speaking to you between now and the meeting. to get that information for our members. And thank you, and have a good evening.
Yep, thank you very much for having us, and I'll get back information to you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Good night. Okay. So yeah, now Mr. Johnson is with us also. I'll add him to the list of members present. Deputy Mr. Anani is also with us. We also have Deputy Commissioner from General Services, Frank Zioli, here also. Are you here for an official reason? Did I miss you? Or are you just listening in? Mr. Zioli? If you're speaking, we can't hear you. Hey.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Mhm.
I became present. I'm present at the meeting because I was told there might be some questions regarding one of the ordinances tonight that
Okay, perfect.
deal with DGS. So I'm here
Okay.
to questions come up.
Okay, I didn't want to
Yeah.
miss yourself.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving along to our agenda. Under approval of minutes from previous meetings, we'll be offering the April 18th as well as May 5th meeting minutes for approval. And actually, Ethan, can you send those out so everyone has them? If anyone has any comments or questions before the meeting, they can bring those up. Moving into local laws. We have local law E of 2022 by Ms. Keegan. It's going to be a referral to council operations. But Ms. Keegan, you care to speak?
Sure. And I would welcome JR or Brett to jump in if I leave anything out. This is relatively timely because our current ability to meet in any kind of virtual capacity expires on June 8th. So we do need to move the legislation along relatively quickly. I believe Kelly, it's going to be a referral to the law committee.
No, I was going to refer to council operations.
So I just, whoever leadership is, I would appreciate it if we could schedule a meeting on that before our June meeting,
Okay.
if possible. But it's relatively straightforward. The language is pulled right from the budget bill, which I believe was attached in the initial email that went out with the legislation. There are only a couple of places where I added some tweaks where language was not necessarily clear in the budget bill. So, for example, what would be considered an excusable or a reason to be able to appear virtually. And then the only other thing that I added to this for you guys to be aware of is the language around confirming to the public that we met the threshold for an excusable absence. And I included that language only to ensure that the public maintains faith in the body, around people appearing virtually and having a valid reason in accordance with state law for that. So if anybody has any questions or any feedback, please certainly let me know. And Brett or JR, if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in.
Go ahead, Brett.
Mr. Williams?
About to say.
I think Councilmember Keegan covered most of it. I would just add that if there's any way the council could dispense with sending this local audit committee, I think that would be for the best in this situation, given that, as Councilmember Keegan pointed out, the deadline for being able to have any sort of remote meeting at all is June 8th, and the meeting is held on June 6th. We would need to have the committee meeting between now and then, and the other difficulty would be if there were any amendments made at the committee meeting. Obviously, it's a local law, it has to age for 7 days. So hopefully there wouldn't be any adjustments that need to be made, but if there are, we do have that aging requirement that we need to consider as well. So again, if we can avoid sending this to committee, I would encourage that course of action.
And also, So that you guys understand how it's structured, this isn't just written for the council. This is written so as to allow for any public body for the city of Albany to be able to utilize remote technology. It also includes reciprocity for members of the public to be able to utilize and comment publicly via video conferencing. Which I know Councilwoman Romero is also working on some rule changes. However, the legislation that came through with the budget bill does require that reciprocity. So that's why it's written into this. I wasn't intending to step on her toes in any way. And there's nothing that would prohibit you guys from making a permanent rule change irrespective of this legislation. It has to be there as well. In order to comply with the state law.
It also requires a public hearing.
So
So once it passes, then there has to be a public hearing before its final adoption.
Okay. All right. So
I would recommend we pass it, let go through the process that Danielle's recommending, and then we can amend it further if necessary. I don't really see anything because it's very limited in what we can amend, but that's just my recommendation.
Okay, so just any questions or comments? I'm of the, the thought right now then that we hold off on the sending, age it, pass it, and then we can adjust it as we need to. Does that make sense?
You have questions on the floor?
Mr. Johnson, Ms. Romero, then Ms. Farrell.
So am I understanding this legislation would allow people to be able to comment virtually?
Yes.
So they already could do that, right?
They
Right.
really can't, so they can submit comments to Danielle in advance of a meeting. And then if we are having a virtual meeting, like we are right now, if there's a public comment period during a committee meeting or a caucus meeting, they are able to do that. But once the June 8th date passes, we will no longer as a public body be able to meet 100% virtually per state law.
That's not my question. That's not my question is about the comment, because I'm okay with all of this. And my concern is about the we had discussion about the possibility of people being able to comment virtually, and I would like us to be able to have full discussion on that part and not be rushed into making a decision on this whole bill based on a time date, because in the past we have followed the call of the state.
Right. The issue is that it's going away, that it expires, and everything we're doing right up to this point is based in that.
I understand, but
Councilmember Johnson, just so you understand, if we do not pass this by the date that the state has set, we can't meet virtually at all. Like, it's just taken away because we have to pass this local law per the state law.
I understand that part, but what I'm saying is that, we as a body had a discussion about something, and it was some people that was for it, and it was some people that are against it. And what I don't want is that for this to be rushed in and without the full conversation of everyone on the concern about when we do virtual, about people having the ability to communicate with us without coming to the council.
So, Mr. Johnson, the language that is currently contained in this bill allows for members of the public to be able to make public comments using video conferencing in accordance with the same sort of rules and parameters that everyone else on the council body has to follow. And there is nothing in this legislation that prohibits council operations and ethics continuing to work on the legislation that Ms. Romero is working on, which would change the ability for the public to be able to video conference in for public comment, which is sort of a separate issue. So to your answer, yes, this does allow for the public to continue to make public comment using video conferencing.
Can I ask a question? If public comment is not necessarily a requirement for your meetings, at one point in time, we had set up the public comment line so people could leave recorded public comment. And I think the thought process behind that was some people may not have video conferencing or a stable internet connection, but may want to make a public comment at a meeting. So can we continue to use, it didn't really take off, but that line exists specifically for the public if they wanted to leave a recorded comment?
This wouldn't prohibit you from doing that. What the budget bill for the state of New York that came through that prompted the need for us to write this legislation and pass it very quickly, what it required is that anything that we were allowing a member of a public body to do in the change of this law had to be also granted, that same opportunity has to be granted to the public. So we can't allow for members to appear by video conference, but then tell members of the public that they have to be in person. So there's language in this that allows for reciprocity of those rights to both the public and the body. But I wanted to make it clear that because operations and ethics was also working on other issues around public meetings, and I don't believe that public comments are necessarily restricted in state law. So there's no reason why the Common Council can't continue with that process of making a much more permanent change. I mean, the other thing I think is important for you guys to know is that the budget bill sunsets. So while we have to pass this public law in order to allow for any member of any public board to appear by video conferencing for any reason, that is a time limited allowance under the change to meetings law that will sunset unless the state passes a permanent change to the law.
Thank you, Ms. Keegan. Ms. Romero, Ms. Farrell?
Thank you. I obviously support this. I was one of the first people to suggest this type of thing back when we had like a little council tussle about like if this is even allowed. And I think it's great. I just actually like the idea of allowing it to go to committee, and like maybe we're gonna have to meet in person once or twice in between that period. But we've just been rushing things lately, and I like it. This is a serious thing. It's great, but it's a big change. I think it's important that it goes to committee and is discussed, and then changes are made there, and then we move forward. That might not be the majority opinion here, but I just wanted to put that out there that there's a procedure here, and I think that there's no reason we shouldn't be able to follow it, because I'm pretty sure people here feel comfortable having like one or two in-person meetings if there's some type of lapse. And then I wanted to just also really quick mention that Ms. Councilmember Keegan is correct in that virtual public comment is not addressed in the state law, but that will be addressed in the council rules. So
yeah, I wanted to make it clear to everyone that this, while there's language in there about public comments in this particular piece of legislation, that should not be taking away from the ongoing conversation of making that permanent. And that shouldn't be impacted by the passage of this legislation. I think it's an important nuance for you guys to understand. I don't have a problem with this going to committee. Folks need to understand that if we don't come to an agreement on the language and allow for the law to age, as of June 8th, we no longer have the ability to do this. So it's a no vote, essentially, from the council on this legislation.
Thank you.
We have to pass the local law by June 8th. Or we don't do it. Sort of like the marijuana legislation. You either opt in or opt out.
That's what I wanted to make sure everybody understood, that this is something, if we don't have, it's not just a couple of meetings that we will have in person, it's we won't be able to do it anymore. So if we want, if this is really just reinforcing what has been state law. So while I completely appreciate the importance of us working through things, I think it's an important part of us being a body, and that's why we're representative. There are some times that we need to move forward, and I would recommend this be one of those times, because this is just reinforcing the state law that we've been working under. We have an ability, and actually I don't think we have that much ability to change it, because this is what the state says, but if we don't pass it ourselves, then we just can't do it. So we don't have an opportunity to change anything about this. These are the rules that we have to operate underneath. And we just, as a body, basically have to say, yes, we understand these are the rules, and we're willing to work in them, and we are willing to work in them so much that we're passing a local law for it. So I think that we have an ability to kind of we can figure out public comment, we can figure out a bunch of different things, but I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room in this.
So that's why I was referring to the actual budget bill legislation, which I believe was provided to you all. If you read through it, the language that's in this particular piece of legislation is relatively the same, with the exception of two things. One, there's much more clear language around what would be an excuse for an extraordinary circumstance, but still has some open language. So we're not, only limited to what's written into the legislation. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be something that we haven't thought about, but it'd be much more clear to the public what typically would be considered an extraordinary circumstance that would allow somebody not to be in person. And the second thing is, having that balance of notification to leadership, and the fact that leadership would comment on the record that somebody did have a valid excuse for having to appear remotely. That is the only piece that I added to the legislation that isn't in the state budget bill. And I did that because I wanted to ensure that if we have members who are not appearing in person, that the public has trust in that we are actually using a valid excuse to be participating by remotely. And so if people have issues with that, that's one component that could come out, and I'm not gonna, have a tantrum over it, but I just wanted to make that also very clear to you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Ballerin, Mr. Johnson.
So I just want to make something clear. What I'm hearing, I want to make sure that's exactly what I'm hearing, that if we don't pass this by the 8th, we won't be able to opt in later on. That if we don't have an option to hold off until beyond the, I just want to make sure that's very clear. If that's not the case, please, tell me that's not the case. But if that is the case, then I think it just needs to be very clear that, why we need to move on this now versus being able to wait and have it go to committee. So I guess that's what I want the answer to. If we wait and have it go to committee, can we still opt in after the 8th? Or is it a situation that we have to opt in now, or, we can't get back in later on?
Right. And so Mr. Williams or Mr. Pichardo, I know you started out by asking us to move ahead with this, but can you answer Mr. Ballerin's question? I mean, I already know the answer, but just go ahead, say it again.
I'm just looking through the state law one more time. I don't know.
I think there was something in there around 60 days from the budget bill.
Well, that 60 days was extending the current executive order structure.
I mean, you just gotta say, can we do it after? I mean,
No, we can't.
Just give it very blunt, no or yes.
We either do it now or we never
do it, lose it forever. Speak now,
Uh,
forever hold your peace. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Well,
Just want to make sure it's clear to myself and, you know.
The 60
community.
days with
Yeah.
the extension of the executive order from the budget.
right. Yeah, give me a minute on that, and I'll get back to you. Just affirmatively, one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, while we're doing that, Mr. Johnson.
So one last question. Like when we are presented with this stuff with a time stamp on it, right? Why isn't this conversation coming up in a timely manner? Why do we keep on getting in situations where we have to make a decision before we, like we constantly can only make a decision based on the information presented, and it's always a hurry up. And so I'm just asking, why do we keep on get put in these situations like this?
That
If
one I
we
can
knew the
answer.
state- if we knew the state law was going out, like I'm not understanding why we weren't having this conversation 2 months ago or 3 months ago.
We didn't.
There
We
wasn't a
didn't.
state
This
law.
was a last minute negotiation that when they were passing the budget, this was thrown on us very last minute.
So this was brought up by Brett at the last caucus meeting that we held. So the last Wednesday that we met, Brett mentioned to all of us that were at that meeting that this legislation had been included in the budget bill. He asked everyone on the council or everyone that was at that meeting if they would like to work with him on this legislation. No one raised their hands. So I, at the very end, said I volunteer as tribute. And I think, Brett, I drafted something to you that week based on the budget bill.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that part of the response.
And yeah,
I think from most of our perspective that I just don't think we realized this was in here, because when it was discussed about extending it, the nuances of this were not in there. And I know I personally did not go and look at the open meetings law section. So I think it took everyone by surprise. And then, as Megan said, Brett brought it up in the last meeting. So it was unknown, really.
The budget bill language was very different from the changes to open meetings law that has been floating around in committee throughout like the fall and winter legislative sessions in the state. So we have had a couple discussions where I've briefed you guys on where that legislation is and what the issues are with the language in it and why it may not be the best idea for us to adopt that from a state change perspective, because it potentially puts people at risk because they would have to disclose where they're meeting from virtually by themselves with no security. So that language was taken out and this was put into the budget bill at the very last minute. And trust me when I say I had a wonderful time trying to find it. I think it was like 600 or 700 pages into the bill, and it's not really easy to dig out, but I was able to pull out the language and copy it over into another doc, so it was easy for everyone to see. And I basically kept our local law as close to what is in the budget bill as humanly possible, with the exception of a couple areas where the state said we had to make a rule on a specific issue and followed what they said the rule has to be.
That, Mr. Johnson, did that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so we are gonna allow it to age and intro age, and then we can make the adjustments. Can I get a show of hands? Who's okay with that?
We just get a response from JR or Brett about
Mr.
like,
Williams.
is it definite? Yes or no, kind of thing.
Trying to quickly scan 600 pages right now.
And while he's looking for that,
Let me pull up the actual
Pro Temp, I just
thing.
have a quick question. You mean let it age and vote on it when?
7 after it ages at our next
So,
meeting. It would be
our next-
it actually
for
would
our
be
next-
more than meeting for the next meeting, which is 2 weeks.
You're right. It's not for Monday. It's for 2 weeks from then.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Because it would be intro on Monday and then. So we're just waiting on the attorneys. So we'll just move on and we'll come back to it. But we're looking for an answer for that. So thank you. Just give me the high sign when you're ready. Okay, so that was local law E. Okay. Next, local law F is 2020. It's Mr. Hoey. It's going back to our old legislation from last year of adding structure and for public safety to address the Commissioner of Public Safety issue. Mr. Hoey, you want to speak to this? And this will be an intro and then go to the Public Safety Committee to be discussed.
Yes, it's we had local law C had included the public safety department, and we decided that it might be easier because a lot of questions came up that if we separate the two. So the idea is that we modified C, we took that public safety department out, and now we're going to address that in local law E. No, F, I'm sorry.
Yes. Thank you. And so that'll be a referral to the Public Safety Committee. Mr. Johnson, is your hand up again or is it from before?
That's from before. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right, that'll be going to Public Safety. On to ordinances introduced. We had the school district folks in ordinance 135222 by Mr. Robinson relating to 56 North Lark Street over at the old New Covenant and the Darby Hill Community Center. Again, we're waiting on information from Mr. Honeywell that'll determine if we move forward with that or not. That's ordinance 135222. That's Mr. Robinson's, along with my ordinance 145222 for the property at 596 North Pearl Street down in at the North Albany Middle School. Again, we're waiting on that information, and we'll be moving forward with those pending the information that we received from them. But right now, and I believe through our discussion, the intent was to make that happen. So go ahead.
I just want to have like a clarification point. I think the only information that we're waiting, not only, but the information that we're waiting on is for ordinance 135222. I don't think we're waiting on any information for the North Albany. I just want to make sure we're not there could potentially be something that holds up one, and I really want to make sure we don't hold up the other because they really need outdoor space. So, and to keep moving forward to ensure that that middle school opens. So,
yes, thank you for that and adding clarity to that. So that's where we are on those. Next, under ordinances held, Mr. Anani's ordinance 22122. We'll be moving forward with that. Mr. Anani, you want to, any comments?
No, I don't have any comments. I went to committee, moved out of committee, made amendments to it. And I want to thank all my colleagues for the support.
Thank you, Mr. Anani. We'll be voting on that.
Mr. Zeoli, want to say anything?
Well, part of one of the reasons I was told to be on was because what was agreed to in the committee was not basically what came out of committee. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process and what the plan of the process was. Because, we did say on the record and in the committee that we were in favor of this. We are in favor of this. We think it's a great idea. In fact, we're doing it in a lot of ways already. So we're actually okay with it being codified and put in writing. But something was added afterwards. And I just wanted to speak to, just to kind of get an idea of what the purpose of that was and explain to you why that may not necessarily work.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, so we had talked about that it's not a problem to plant a tree. Anywhere we remove a tree, to plant a tree and offering somebody the tree, not a problem. Free of charge, city would pick up that cost. We can handle that, not an issue, because we're doing that in some form or fashion now. But we said that there was sometimes there's an issue with replacing a tree in the same location a tree was removed, because there could be a huge root, and to be honest with you, it happens like 90% of the time. To put it back in the exact same spot where the tree was removed, we can't always do it. Sometimes there's underlying power line out under a power there. We just can't do it. So we said that if you can put in when it was practical, is kind of how it was done. And then that something popped in there that says the commissioner would have to place those reasonings and the reason for that in writing. When it's going to happen 90% of the time, we can tell you what that is now. I think that's an unreasonable way of having to do that. Okay. We actually, have a great way of doing this. And the way that we do it now, because we've been doing it this way, is if we do remove a tree in front of someone's home, we send them a letter in the mail stating, would you like a tree to be replaced? And, we call it the AstraZeneca letter, because we say, you know what, if you can't afford, we can help. We can do it for free. And will you adopt it? Will you love it? Will you take care of it? That's kind of what we're doing now. We would continue to do it that way, providing every location a chance. If they don't send anything back, we take that, or they don't contact us. It's a free tree. We're telling them that. If they don't get back to us and say they don't want it, or they don't get back to us at all, then we see that as they don't want one. Okay. And we can keep that open for a while, so that if they come back to us months later, we can still do it. It's not like there's too much of a time frame on that. That's where we're at on that. So that we're already doing that. To then have to say why we can't, it's we still do it. It's just they can't have it in the same location. So in a lot of the right-of-way pieces of grass area in front of people's homes, the tree might be in the middle of that, but we can go to the left, we can go to the right. Sometimes it's on one side of the driveway, one to the other. Sometimes it can't be at all. And in which case we can't even offer it. It all depends. But we could always say to them, we're going to put it down the street or someplace else. So that's kind of the process. And I think that we would get bogged down with this, having to put everything in writing of why, just kind of, we're already doing that in a way. I think this is unnecessary.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zioli. So I do not want to have the committee meeting again, but I do want to hear from Mr. Anani, and I believe Mr. Pichardo may have some info to add also.
Yeah, I'll just keep it brief. We have the minutes from that meeting, and our research council actually looked at the minutes. I think for the sake of transparency, I believe that the language requiring the commissioner to explain why a tree cannot be replaced is more than reasonable. I don't see what the big deal is. If they're already doing it to inform residents, I don't see why they can maybe CC us when they do that. So I just have I don't think what we're asking for is unreasonable, particularly when, trees are a quality of life issue. And I receive a lot of calls and emails and being stopped in the neighborhood about it. So instead of a constituent having to reach out to me and then I have to reach out to, the commissioner or deputy commissioner or the forestry, I think the onus should be on DGS to reach out to council members when the reason why a tree is not being planted, or we could be knowledgeable and informed on what to communicate to our constituents instead of having to reach out to DGS and hoping to get a response back so we can get that response back to our constituents. Trees is a huge quality of life issue. And just to talk about a story, in 2020 of September, we had a press conference on Myrtle Avenue about trees being planted. 2 years later, it still hasn't been planted. There's no reason behind why it hasn't planted. There's no communication from Department of General Service. I've reached out on numerous occasions, and many of the neighbors are frustrated. So I think it's important that we have some type of accountability and response from DGS so we can better articulate to our constituents what's going on, particularly when a tree is taken down or when a tree is about to be placed. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anani. And so we're essentially just looking for notification to the council member to say, hey, we can't do it because it's not practical or practicable because there's a driveway there, or there's something impeding a simple install. That's what we're looking for, correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so I don't see that as being so unreasonable. But Ms. Zamer?
I'm just trying to clarify too, because I'm on the committee and so correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, I didn't just look at the minutes right now, but I thought we had come to an agreement that it was going to be added that when possible, a tree will be put back, a tree that's removed will be replaced when possible in the same place, but I don't recall a discussion on how that notification has to take place. I agree, it's not a big deal, like we should be notified, but I'm also not on the ground. So if that is like, you know, a huge ask and creates like tons of paperwork and bureaucracy that's not possible with their staffing levels. Anyway, we didn't talk about this in committee, this part of it. So I'm just wondering how that change came about without like the knowledge of the committee members who voted it out favorably with that one amendment. How'd that happen without my knowledge?
I think if you go back to the video, also the minutes, just check out the minutes. That was said, I specifically said that language in there, so.
That they would have to notify us? He said
So
that they would have,
do you have the amendment in front of you by any chance?
Right, and
but I have to close my screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody read it.
I rewatched the video, and there was how it played out is DGS asked for the practicability thing. Then there was some conversation. Mr. Anani paused, and then from what I understood, then there was a list of items brought up: driveways, utility lines, when practicable. And that's where the notification portion came up. That's what I've reviewed. Now,
what do you mean by the notification?
Yes, that's what I recall reading. But I also wanted to add it too. Regardless of that, DGS has to put it in writing regardless, because 345.3 requires it anyway. Anytime when it comes into the scope regarding trees and it's under the powers and duties of the administrative authority, it has to be in writing anyway. It says that, you know, the department, when requested by the common council, shall consider. So I'm not seeing, you know, if it's in this or if it's not, what's the difference, because it's required anyway.
Right. If there was an amendment that's different than what the committee had understood, that's what my issue is. But I will go back and look. That doesn't seem like, you know, that big of a deal. But I don't recall, I was pretty engaged. I don't recall this particular aspect about specific notification for this specific issue.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to add, Mr. Pichardo? If not, then we'll go to Mr. Williams.
All I was gonna say is, in an effort to try and clarify some of these things for myself, I did try and find the minutes and the video of that meeting, and I wasn't able to track down either online. The minutes don't appear to be up on the website. The video doesn't seem to be on Facebook or YouTube, although I'm admittedly scouring the Common Council webpage as I speak. And I'm not finding it immediately there. You know, we have been told repeatedly that these things happened at the meeting. For those of us who weren't there, it is a little difficult to ascertain what in fact did happen, because those resources aren't seemingly available.
Yeah. So, Mr. Pichardo, where'd you access the video?
I accessed it through the recording we have saved in the cloud, and I'll find it on the website because it's easily accessible because it gets streamed right there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle.
I mean, I would think it would be on Facebook as well, but I checked a few times and didn't see it.
It should be all committee meetings get streamed to Facebook and the council's YouTube page. So I'll send a link out to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're still in the place where we started out with just moving ahead with voting on it as is. Mr. Pichardo said he reviewed the video, and if it's a requirement anyways, I don't think the language should matter if you're supposed to be doing it. But Mr. Zioli, I got you.
Is it a requirement that we have to provide in writing to the council? Is that what is being said? Because you know, I was unaware of any such ruling that every time we take a tree down, we've got to let the council know we've done that.
Yeah. Is it the property owner? It's not the council, right? Mr. Pichardo.
Let's see, the way I understood it is it just has to be put in writing. Doesn't say whom, but according to the general 345.3, it says, you know, there's submission to the council too. So
This is every time a tree is removed.
let's see, for any special question. It says within the scope of its work under chapter 345, which is trees and vegetation. So it shall be the responsibility of the department to study, investigate, counsel, and develop and/or update annually and administer a written plan for the care, preservation, pruning, planting, replanting, removal, or disposition of trees and shrubs in parks, along streets, and any other public areas. Such plan shall be presented annually to the common council, and upon its acceptance and shall constitute the official comprehensive tree plan to the city. The department, when requested by the council, shall consider, investigate, make findings, reports, and recommend it upon any special manner or question of coming within the scope of its work. Then it goes further back to all trees on all streets too.
Yeah, I'm actually familiar with that part. That's been in there a long time. And when Mike O'Brien was the chair of the committee, that was something that we looked at, because it kind of, what we were told back then by corp counsel is it kind of talks in circles. Like it tells you to do something and then tells you not to do it. So I know it's been looked at to be replaced, that language. It probably never has been. So that could be that. But it was an annual plan. It doesn't speak to every time we take a tree down, we've got a list. A tree was taken down on 21 Clinton Avenue. It doesn't say that. It just says that we have to, a written plan had to be put in. You know, bottom line on this, to have, you know, for us to have to send a letter every single time or send a notice to the council, we would need to add more staff on. Okay, it's a hardship on the department to do that. It's a lot more clerical. It wasn't. I was at the meeting. I remember the meeting, and I don't remember, and that's why I'd like us to find the recording, because I did not see anywhere where that was said, where the writing part was put, unless because it was Zoom, something blipped. I don't know, but I remember that didn't come up. Everything else, yes, did come up. As Councilwoman Zamer said, yes, exactly. That was what we discussed, but the in writing did not come up. That, under my recollection, it did not. So, I mean, again, but let's say we would, you know, the decision was made that we would have to do this. We would need more staff to be able to do this. I can't be every time put in writing. We can't do it because of this. It's more inspectors to go out and inspect. I mean, we do look at it. It's a quick thing. We do send it out, and this is actually in its infancy too, doing it this way, because we didn't do that in the past. This is part of the 2025 and our goal to get 2025 trees on the street before 2025. So we just started doing this recently. Again, so that's where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Zioli.
You're very welcome.
Romero.
Thank you. Would it be possible to do a quarterly report instead of like every single time that a tree is removed? Just, there must be some accounting of when that occurs. So instead of every single time it occurs, I could imagine, Deputy Commissioner, that would be like really, really, I understand that concern. But I still also understand Councilman Anane's like intent with putting in that onus. So what is there a middle ground that we can find, like some type of report is my question. Whether it's not every single time, but is it quarterly? Is it, annually or something like that?
Can I answer? Can I answer?
Yeah.
It's we could do an annual report. Absolutely. To tell you we could list them, X amount of trees, give you a summary, or we can say, these were the trees that were removed. these were the trees that we planted, we could absolutely do that. You know, we are keeping that data, but you know, it's the every time. So if 5 trees come down today, 5 tomorrow, we're going to plant, we're going to offer, we're going to give them an opportunity. There's time in between too. So this isn't offering as much as that we have to say why we can't do it right in front. All right. And it does, just because we don't, we have to wait to talk to the people to see if they want it. So an annual report could be doable. Okay. But a quarterly or an every week or every day that this happens, we wouldn't have the staffing to do that.
Can I just get a clarification from Councilwoman Zamer's concern? The current status of the bill is that it moved out of committee with the additional language that they have to notify the council member.
No,
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm just sorry.
no, the amendment was, and again, I could be wrong, but this is what is bothering me, is that what's being presented tonight is not what I thought. I thought the amendment was that there would be language that DGS will replace every tree that it removes. And what they asked, what the commissioner and deputy commissioner asked, was that if there was an if possible in the same, because then there was an explanation why a tree can't always go back in the same location if a tree had been there for a long time and there were certain utility lines underneath, or if it was ruining a sidewalk, it would have to be a few feet over, a few inches over or something. They asked that the amendment be that it may, if possible, in the same place. As far as notification of the council every time a tree comes down, I do not recall that. And so that's what's troubling to me, is that this is like not the legislation that I thought we voted out. So if something happened after the committee meeting, that's troublesome to me without my knowledge.
Right. Okay. So thank you, Ms. Zamer. So we at the onset, I said I didn't want to rehab the committee meeting. We do that so often. So let's just hold it and get some clarification. Take a look at what's there, what the law says, and get some clarification before we move forward. So that's hold on. Before we move forward, what were you going to say, Mr. Renani?
No, I'm okay with it as long as we vote on it at Monday's meeting. But again, this goes to this department leadership. Whenever council asks for something that needs to be done, it's always a pushback, and it's like this department just wants to just do their thing without any.
Let's
But
it's just not appropriate.
It's that's okay. Well, I'm sharing
that's why I didn't want to go down.
I'm sharing my frustration.
Let's just we'll look to clarify it, and then go from there. But I would also say that what I would also say is that as the legislative body of this city, if we decide that's what we want to do, and we want that report, and we want it done, things done a certain way, it has to be done that way. I mean, irrespective of, and of course, we wouldn't screw a department and dump a lot of work on them, but we create the policy for the city. And so if our policy says it has to occur, then it has to occur. The issue here is that we're not sure. We have members from the same meeting saying that different things occurred. So let's get it right and clear it up. That's why I'm saying I'm going to hold it, and I'll try to find the video myself and see what it says, and work it that way. And then if it says what you say, then we'll move forward. But again, we really ought to be trying to work together. That's not really happening, I think, right now.
And I will say, just as the sponsor of this legislation, this is the only amendment that I want to push forward. Thank you. So
the requirement to have them notify the council member.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, and there were other members in that. We won't go there right now.
I was gonna ask if anybody else was present at that meeting because
Were you present?
I mean, I have no recollection of that particular amendment, Owusu.
So, Ms. Keegan,
So, I mean, I'm not on the committee, but I was there for the meeting and I was there for the discussion on the amended language, and I don't specifically recall the department notification being part of what the body voted on, but I wasn't allowed to vote. But I'm at this point like very confused because I just want to make sure now that my interpretation of what the language actually says is correct, because now the conversation has gotten me completely confused about what the legislation even says. Is it that the department has to notify the council every time a tree gets cut down, or is it that the department has to notify the council every time a replacement tree is supposed to come in and the department cannot put a replacement tree in?
The latter.
Okay. That's what I thought, but after this conversation, I was a little confused.
yeah, it kind of went a little sideways. Mr. Williams, and then Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, looking again at this legislation, it occurs to me that this legislation in its amended form never even came back to Corporation Counsel's office for its review. If you look at the legislation, it's as amended as of May 6th, 2022. And then if you look at the bottom, it says approved as to form this 28th day of January, 2022. When I get an amended item of legislation, I update the approved as to form date to reflect a date the same as or near the amended date, which clearly didn't happen here. So yeah, this amended language, whether it came out of committee that way or not, never came to me or my office for review and input or approval as to form.
Yeah, okay. So let's hold it and get it right. So, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I just want to, because I'm listening, and I think I heard JR say that, you know, he watched the video and he kind of supported what Owusu said, and I'm just like I'm having a problem where you know, we get into like, you know, back and forth. You know, clearly the council said that he wasn't present, but he watched it on the video. I think I heard that. I heard, you know, what Owusu said. I heard what Councilwoman Zamer said, and so I'm kind of getting confused because it was a person that wasn't at a meeting that watched the video of the meeting and said that they saw or they heard what is being asked in the amendment. And I'm just trying to understand how it's still a question if, you know, council said he saw it or heard it. Like, why are we still having a conversation about, like, it, you know, it's still a question. I'm a little.
Right, so your point is we should just move ahead.
No, I'm just saying that if the, like, you know, all right, so it's back and forth between two council members, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have a council, you know, that said that he watched the committee meeting and you know, he supported what one council person said. So now why am I hearing that, you know, there's still a question?
Because is it resolved? Is the question resolved? Because from where I'm sitting, it's not.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is if Owusu was saying one thing, right? And then you got JR saying that he heard the same thing, right? And there's two other people that are saying that they didn't hear it. Like, I'm not understanding how a person who wasn't at a meeting can watch a video and see, you know, can connect with Owusu was saying, and two people that was at the meeting are saying that they didn't hear it. And so like, and so for us to stop this conversation and say, we got to go back and check the, you know, I'm trying to understand, how did it get out of committee to come here and have this type of conversation?
Well, it was passed out of committee, but we have a committee member saying that what was discussed in committee doesn't line
I
up
can,
with
if
what.
you don't mind, President Pro Tem,
Speak-
all
yep.
I can say is, Councilmember Johnson,
Mhm.
if this is the amendment that Councilmember Anane recommended and thinks that that's the amendment that was attached during the committee, that is not the amendment that I recall or understood. The amendment that I understood was the location. It didn't have to do with notification. Perhaps when we look back on the video, maybe the reason that somebody hears something differently on a video feed is, but maybe somebody was saying something while other people were talking, or there's that possibility. We'll certainly go back and look at it. I'm not even making a judgment on the amendment. I'm simply completely uncomfortable with the fact that this is like a new amendment and I'm on the committee that voted this out favorably, and this is not something I was aware of. So I will go back, and if I was wrong, if that's the amendment that the committee discussed and agreed to, I will say publicly that I was wrong. This isn't a judgment on the particular amendment. This is me feeling like something occurred after committee without my knowledge. And if that's on me, I will publicly admit to it, apologize and whatever, but I can't just like turn it off and say, I guess I was wrong. I guess I heard something wrong.
Just a quick question. Do you have the actual amendment in front of you by any chance? Deb? You might just want to take a look at it.
No, I asked for it. I've been looking for it.
Yeah,
I actually texted and asked for it.
Section B, I think subsection I. So.
If you could send it, because I was just looking through and trying to find it.
If you pull up the May 16th meeting notice in your city email, it's in the attachments.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't.
It's how the attachments are written.
Okay, well, we don't need, I will look it over. I know
Okay.
we want to move on, so.
Okay, yep, and so before more comments, if the committee members that voted on this and voted it out are comfortable moving forward with it, then I'm comfortable moving forward. My sticking point was a member saying she doesn't recall, because we vote on these amendments. We vote on stuff when they leave the committee meetings, and presumably if we're voting, we know what's there, and so that was my sticking point with this. So again, I wasn't at the meeting. I'm getting all this just like everyone else, right? Well, some of us right now. So if the committee is all comfortable moving forward with it, you know,
I can just. I was at the meeting. Sorry, I didn't speak sooner. So what I recall is Flynn specifically asked Councilmember Anane if he was comfortable with those changes. They then kind of went over those, like, because they literally said like, oh, it's a one sentence change, and then they discussed what that change would be, and then Councilmember Anane said what it was and that he was okay with it.
and that's representative of the amendment that's before us.
Yes.
Okay.
Ethan, you looked at the amendment and you recall what that change was?
I don't have it in front of me, but from
that's kind of important. Yeah.
Yes. No, I understand. And from what I remember and from watching the video and doing the minutes, that's what I can recall at this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel.
Thank you. Thank you, Samuel.
Miss Farrell. Miss Farrell.
I just wanted to use this as a teaching moment, and as we're working on some of the rules changes, actually nailing down what our amendment process is, how important that is, because I think this idea of doing an amendment after it goes through committee is not always a great idea. I think if we're amending something, it should be looked at by the committee before we vote on it. And I think that we will be addressing that in our rules change, but I want everybody to put a pin in this discussion. And I also would agree, if the council members who are who are on the committee there are not comfortable with it, then this is something that will be, I think everybody is a huge fan of this legislation. I mean, trees are I had no idea I would have to deal with trees so much as a council member. But it is one of the major things that I have to deal with. And I really appreciate Councilmember Nani bringing this up because again, it's so often. And people, whether it's taken down or whether it's still up, they're upset one way or another. There's both ways. And it would be great to have something there to just know that it's there. So that's really appreciated. But just to kind of give the members who were at the meeting the opportunity to go back through and make sure if that would be okay. I think that would be a nice collegial respect thing all the way around. And we appreciate you coming in, Frank, as well to talk on it.
Yeah, thank you. And what I'm going to suggest is for future meetings when we're dealing with this, that we have the most up-to-date version accessible to our staff, for, screen sharing and looking at them. We used to do that with Michelle and in the past we've done it. That would be helpful also because we're
pull
all.
the version up. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted you to pull it up like a half an hour ago, but let me, yeah, if you got it, if you got it, right? Because I mean, that seems to be the sticking point. Everyone's saying and speaking to their recollection of it, but no one can read it off to everyone or show it to everyone.
Sorry, are Owusu and I the only DGS committee members here?
All right, I'd have to look.
Do I currently have the piece of legislation up?
And yes, Deb, it's just me, you and I. Joyce, Jamel is not here, and I forgot who's the fourth.
I thought I saw Joyce before. She's not here?
Yeah.
Yes, that's if BI is the amendment, that's the amendment that we discussed. If replanting another tree or trees is not practical in the same location due to including but not limited to utility lines, the Commissioner of Department of General Service shall place those reasons in writing was not, that must have been something I missed in our discussion. Because we didn't write this and show and have it up on the screen. We had a discussion and then this was what was written. And that last phrase, shall put it in writing, is not something that I was privy to.
Right, okay, and so that, I mean, and shall put it in writing, that's pretty broad. So
if I didn't say to the council.
Okay.
And JR mentioned that is already in code, that it has to be in writing to, or that somebody has to be notified, but it doesn't say to the council, correct?
Yeah, it just says, that portion just says in writing, but that's what it's already required under another section of the code.
So with that, are you satisfied, Ms. Zamer, or you still want to?
I guess it's something we can talk about before in the next couple of days. I'm happy to talk about before I vote. Okay. I'm a little disturbed that was put in. I feel under the radar, quite honestly, because that's not, and I'll go back and maybe I had to deal with a child or something when that was the notification part was being discussed. But I just feel like that opens up a big window. I have no problem with it. The only problem, again, I will reiterate, is that it's something I feel like went under the radar and was not clear in our discussion.
Right. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Are you opposed to being notified by DGS?
Nope. And that's what I just said. I'm absolutely not. What I'm opposed to is an amendment I agreed to being changed in a way that I'm not, that I don't feel like was part of our discussion. That's it. And by the way, you had said that the council had to be notified every time a tree came down, which seems a little bit.
Yeah, that's not what it
A little
says,
bit much
actually.
for a department to have to deal with.
But they say they already notified the property owners. What is the problem in notifying council when you're notifying the property owner?
But that's not what the amendment says. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something being changed, an amendment that we agreed to in committee that I'm not sure we were all aware of.
Right. And so, yeah, why don't we do that? So, yeah. And
thank you,
this
Kelly.
Was my concern from the onset. Ms. Keegan, do you have something to say about this, or?
I do. I mean, I also think it's important to point out to Owusu that the legislation as written doesn't actually require that it requires that they write something down about why they didn't put the tree back in that spot. It doesn't require that they notify anybody in writing. It just means that there's a foilable record of why the tree didn't go in that spot. As I read this language, there may be other components of the law that require certain reports to be made to the council, but this specific legislation doesn't put a time requirement, I mean, to speak to Mr. Zioli's concern with the language, I don't see how the language would actually require that his department notify the council each and every time. If there's another component to the law that requires that they give us an annual tree report, the way that this particular amendment is written, technically they could tell us once a year, because there really isn't anything specific in the language that requires that written notification be made at any specific point in time, or how often, or to whom.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Keegan. So, okay, we'll move on from that. I'll look at the video and listen and see. The language as it's written, I'm comfortable with. I think it's pretty broad though, but I wasn't a part of the discussion that came up with it. So, yeah. So we'll get some clarification on it, and then and the thing is, I thought Miss Love was here. I thought she was before or whatever. We only have two of the members from the committee here. Not that they would recall and be helpful. And moving this along. But I mean, how do members feel about moving forward? You want clarification, right? You don't want to just don't everybody.
I'm not interested in holding up this legislation. I think it's good. I think it's a good piece of legislation that everyone supports.
Okay. All right. So then we'll move ahead with it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ballerin.
I guess my only confusion is with the fact that it's so broad. It doesn't really say when and how it needs to be notified. So there is an opportunity to have some,
further discussion to
clarify. Just if we want to file, this just a suggestion made by Councilwoman Romero about making a quarterly, so that it's a quarterly report of all the trees that's been taken down, and just like an Excel sheet, so people know, and I'm sure there's some type of, someone's already doing that, and sharing it with us. So I think, there's space for compromise, one, and two, it's also good for us to know what to expect, and how we're going to get notified, so we can, advocate for our neighbors, because sometimes maybe a neighbor doesn't know how to advocate for themselves, and they get the letter or they don't get the letter, or maybe they see the letter but don't know exactly, don't always understand what it's about. So it's a way for us to just reach out, and say, hey, do you want it to? You don't. Some people do, some people don't. And, it allows us to be able to have those conversations. But yeah, I think there's open ways we try to get what Councilman Anani is trying to do without putting an additional burden on the staff. So I think we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And the thing is, we're not at this point, we're not going to come to that conclusion or resolve this tonight. However, if again, the committee members aren't here, so let's just, I'm going to just hold it for clarification. If we can get some clarification between now and the meeting, we'll move ahead with it. Otherwise, we'll and it sounds like from Mr. Bauer and your comments that you didn't say it should be back in committee and add and change that stuff, but that's how those things happen. They don't just happen. So let's just move on at this rate, because we've been going round and round. Moving on to resolutions introduced. Ms. Romero, the good cause eviction. It's 50-52-22. You want to speak? Is she still here?
I'm still here.
Okay. There she is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure most of us are co-sponsors on this.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we can just support it on the local level as the statewide electeds are pushing to push it at a state level. And thank you to Councilmember Ballerin for his amendment as well to as we were drafting. It's exciting that we're all kind of on board on this. So.
Yep. And so actually, Ethan, can you add me as a sponsor on there? I didn't get my response to Ms. Romero in time, so can you add me also? So we'll be moving ahead with that. And there's a question: are we all co-sponsor? Most folks here, are we all on board for co-sponsoring? I mean, we got quite a few there, and it might end up being all of us. So, but yeah. So we'll vote on that at Monday's meeting. Next, Council Member Love's resolution 51-52-22. It's street renaming for Steuben Street in honor of Adam Blake and Catherine Blake, and naming Steuben in their honor. It'll be a referral to General Services. Okay. Next resolution by Mr. Hoey, resolution 52-22-22. It's a reappointment to the CPRB of Matthew Ingram. That'll be a referral to public safety. Okay. Next is also by Mr. Hoey, 53-52-22. Reappointment of Dr. Vanelia Harden to the CPRB. Again, referral to public safety. Okay, then 52-22 by Ms. Zamer and company. You guys you care to speak to it? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'm sure we all support it, but you guys can speak if you'd like to.
I think I've spoken enough tonight, and I'll speak on this Monday night.
Monday, okay, yep. And I'd actually like to be. I'm sure we'll all be added as co-sponsors, but I'd definitely like to be added. So, any questions, comments? We'll be voting on that. Next. Resolution by Mr. Hoey's 55-52-22R. This is street renaming for Sandra Capolino Pasquini. 55-52-22. We're going to General Services. Mr. Hoey, do you care to say a few words?
Yeah, Santa
Santa was the secretary for our neighborhood association since its inception, a long time ago. I would say close to 20 years. Her family has been in the neighborhood since like the turn of the century. And she just passed away last year from cancer. And, we talked to her kids, and they were very honored that we could do something like this. So I just hope everybody would support me on this to rename the street in her honor.
Thank you, Mr. Holy. Okay, next on to resolutions held. We'll have resolution by myself and Mr. Johnson, 414222, recognizing Green Tech. Mr. Johnson, we're gonna, did he leave? I don't see him. I believe Mr. Samuel, Mr. Johnson said he would have Green Tech there for us on Monday, correct?
I can ask him to confirm, but I can also quickly check right now.
Okay, all right. So the idea was to honor them while they're present. So we have to find out if they're going to be.
Yeah, they'll be coming.
Present. Okay, so we'll be moving ahead with resolution 4222. Mr. Hoey, did you want to jump in there? I saw your hand for a minute.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we're gonna meet in person. Then is what I'm
Yeah,
imagining.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, and then resolution by Ms. Love, 485122, for the Howards and renaming Clinton Avenue. That we'll also be voting on that on Monday. So that's it for our agenda. We kind of went through a lot, and it was a good discussion that we had. Again, reconducting committee meetings. I think we discuss this stuff, we go through, and then we often jump back into our meeting and kind of relitigate and rediscuss, which I mean is healthy and good, but again, it's kind of at times feels like we're on the hamster wheel. But it's all worthwhile. Everyone's opinion and thoughts matter, and we should be respectful of each other, and we are. So yeah. So for Ms. Keegan, you want to go on? But after that, Ms. Farrell, can you just go through the leadership stuff since I missed the meeting, and you can talk about that. Ms. Keegan.
I just wanted to circle back to the open meetings law legislation because we didn't get an answer from the attorneys on that. Whatever you guys decide, if you want this to go to committee, that's fine. So long as
Quick turnaround. It's gotta be a quick turnaround.
yeah, I would just request that we schedule a meeting like sooner rather than later. Just understanding the impact that even if we don't have to pass something by June 8th, if we don't pass something, we have the potential for folks who have issues with meeting in person for whatever reason that won't be able to meet by video conference beyond just the council body. That's all. So
and as for the report of the attorneys, I guess there's a difference of opinion between the two of us with regard to that. So with that fact as it is, my recommendation would still be to not send the legislation to committee if that can at all be avoided in order to ensure continuity of the ability to meet remotely in whatever form is authorized by state law.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on this. My concern is we have to give notice to have a committee meeting. So there's time there, and we have the meeting. Is there enough time then to have it aged for the June 6th meeting? I'd have to have a calendar out to look at it, but I don't know what
you have, because you need minimum 7 days to notice a committee meeting. And then if there's any amendments proposed at the committee, then those amendments have to age again. So I can tell you right now, if we were to propose, if this goes into effect now, I mean, if we introduce it, Senate committee gets amended, we wouldn't meet the June 2nd. We wouldn't be able to pass it the June 2nd meeting.
Is it June 2nd or 6th?
Six, sorry, I'm sorry. I have a different date stuck in my head. June
Yeah.
6th.
But if we didn't do any amendments, would there be enough time? I don't have the.
If we don't do any amendments, the way the state law, the way local laws work is you introduce it, then you can only pass it at the next meeting. So and there's no exception with local laws, unlike ordinances with unanimous consent. The only times with local laws that you can bypass the aging requirement is if we receive a message of necessity from the mayor's office to dispense with that.
And I had one more question, and it just popped in my head.
Just quickly, and the way aging works is that legislation has to be in its final form, whatever that may be, for 7 days.
So every time it amends, it has to age every time.
Yeah, I'm very concerned. I would hate to see us lose this opportunity. My other question, and then I'll let Jenny jump in. My question is that if we say we put it through as it's written, and there's parts of there that we want to change later, can we do that if the law is already on the books?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I'm wanting to make people feel better. Can we get this through and then schedule, well, if there's, certain parts that there's problems with, that we, put the committee, send it to committee, make the changes, and then try to get it through. I don't see any disadvantage right now, and that's just me, but I mean, there's 14 other members on this council. So, but that's my suggestion. I'm just worried about the time. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to allow this virtual, which I think is very democratic, and it allows the people in our city to contact us. They don't have to come down. They'll be able to, appear virtually, which is, we've shown that this works. It was forced on us, but I think there's a great advantage to being able to hold our meetings like this, and especially committee meetings. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm strongly urging people that we do this, and then if we need to make changes, let's make the changes. Thank you.
I do want to interject. I don't mean to interrupt anybody, but I do want to, I kept reading the law in the background the entire time. And Mr. Williams is, there's no absolute, it must pass by June 8th first to go into effect, but this is the big but. No one in this, like no public body within the city of Albany can do remote until we pass something. So therefore, if we don't pass it by then, planning board, BZA, all those boards would have to meet in person. And the reason why I say they have to meet in person is because there's no authorization after this June 8th date, the 60 days, for them to meet remotely. And therefore, if anything they do that they pass could then be subject to litigation, meaning it could be thrown out just based on that technicality. So I just want everybody to understand that it's not just us, it's BZA, Human Rights Commission, Planning Board, Historical Resources Commission, a lot of people.
That was just my point, that I wanted everybody to keep in mind that we are not just impacting us. So we might be comfortable doing it remotely for a few times, but it's every single public board in the city, and there's a lot of them. So I don't, from my perspective, I don't think that's really fair of us, especially when we can tweak the legislation at a different point. So
yes, that's the recommendation. I agree with Mr. Williams. We can pass it and then amend it. Yes.
And just procedurally, Councilmember Hoey had sort of recommended passing it and then sending it to committee after that. And okay, I thought that's what I heard. I just wanted to clarify.
If there was amendments needed, we could do it after.
Right. That would just need to be done by a new local law. That was all I was
correct. Correct. You're right.
Okay, Ms. Keegan.
I don't have any opposition to Mr. Hoey's suggestion. I mean, if you guys have significant issues, I think you should absolutely have the opportunity to amend the legislation so far as you can in accordance with state law. I also think it's really important for people to understand that the state law requires that as of June 8th, everyone return to in-person meetings, and the exception, so you have to have a physical body quorum in a physical location. That's part of the state bill language. What the rule allowance is that members of those bodies can request the ability to participate by video conference due to extraordinary circumstances. So I think my concern is we have a lot of voluntary members of the public who could be immune compromised, so on and so forth, who may need to be able to utilize this resource. And if we don't do something prior to June 8th, they lose that right and that opportunity. And I would not want to put people in that position. But I also don't have an issue with then having a committee meeting where you guys have a full and lengthy discussion and come up with amendments where they can do amendments. I'm not going to be in opposition to any of that.
Thank you. Ms. Romero?
Yeah, I think it's clear now, though, that it's not required. It's not like we lose our ability to do it. It's just that it'll affect all other city agencies. I didn't think about it like that. Councilmember Farrell brought that up, which is like such a good point. But I think it makes sense. I'm not sure if anyone else was in opposition to just moving it through, but I would change my position now, given that, as a placeholder to just like pass this. And then when Council Operations and Ethics gets the rules changes, we'll edit it as we see fit, as in accordance with the rules that we're going to be putting forward anyway. So totally agree that as a placeholder, we should definitely just pass this without it going to committee. Totally agree. Thank you.
I would recommend, Gabriella, that when you're doing your rule amendments for the public's ability to participate by video conference, that those rule amendments actually be separate from this legislation, because technically, currently under the state bill, this will sunset in July of 2024. So if you put the rule changes that you're trying to create for the public into this legislation, it goes away in a year.
It's not. We're just changing the rules of the Common Council. It's not.
Yeah,
like,
no. That's what I'm trying to like keep that issue separate from what's in this legislation. Does that make sense to you?
No, it does.
This,
I mean, like
legislation that
we wanted to make to it, that we can just do it when we do our rules. Like totally pass it so we can do virtual meetings. But if we have substantive issues, because we can't do remote until it passes. So I totally get it, because we don't lose it. It's not like the opting in of the marijuana. So I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I do apologize. I misread the 60-day language from the budget bill. So I do apologize for that. But until I went back and reread it. But
600 pages, y'all.
Yeah. I just found a treatise myself. So that's how I learned. But yeah, I think we're all on the same page now. And maybe someone can check in with Councilmember Johnson, who I think was the only person that might have voiced an opposition, so that we can be on the same page before Monday.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, Ms. Farrell, you want
to? Yeah, so we talked about several different things. One of them was different processes of kind of going through making sure that there are different city people at committee meetings, which we always make sure that there are, but I think some of the confusion pieces that we're dealing with is maybe more with our amendment process, because when we dug back in, we always had the appropriate city people there. But we also, it's important to have city people in our meetings. So I know that from council's perspective, we really always like them there. And Dorsey and Darius are usually in those meetings now too. And Tom Dorsey talked a bit about, because for people that aren't aware, Dorsey was chair of the Public Safety Committee committee for years. And she had some ideas on kind of working through the process of local law C and local law F. And so I kind of walk through Kelly through it, and maybe the three of us can talk and connect with Dorsey and to kind of give an overall structure. They really want to make sure that similar to the collaborative process that really had a lot of community input and also had a lot of the different stakeholders, including police and community members involved. They are hoping that that's the process that we'll do. And I think that that is the process from every single meeting that I've been in. That's the process that's desired. And I encourage, and I think that's something that we should touch base about to make sure that there is a comfort level with if there is somebody from the city, if we might not be dealing with a specific piece of it, but certainly if the chief wants to be part of a discussion, unless there's something where he absolutely shouldn't be part of a discussion, he should be empowered to be there, or anybody, if Corp Council wants to be there. Of course, we appreciate Brett's presence among us, but maybe other members of Corp Council would like to join us too. So to just ensure that I've always had the feeling that it's the desire for that discussion is to be a very thorough discussion. It's not something that we're rushing. It's something that we want to be thorough and thoughtful, and to actually come up with some real solutions and change through it. So I really, I think we can, if you're good with that, Tom, we can all meet and kind of have a bigger discussion on that. And definitely have you connect with Dorsey as well, because she did have some really good ideas. And I think she could be a great resource for us through this. Another thing is, so we have we're working on the ARPA, like the final process to kind of get to the point where we will be voting and then really getting the funds into the community's hands, which is of course everyone's goals. Again, thank you to the members that read through that, because it is a big task. This weekend I read through 870 pages, Kelly, I read through 870 pages, and it's hard because we have many times more applications than we do have funds. And in many ways, it's a great problem to have, because to have this many options is wonderful, but it's also really heartbreaking because I think all of us would like to fund all of them. And there was a request. We had asked, I think the initial that the administration really wanted people to like dream big and just come up with some great ideas and not have any limits on cost or this or that. So there's some really big ticket things that were in there, and there was definitely a request to scale back, and that was not necessarily heard, so that could impact what we're seeing as well. So I wanted to share that with council members, because I think that we're going to be getting, we can't fund all of these. It's not possible, and we're going to be getting outreach on it. Anybody that has outreach, there's that Albany for All at albanynewyork.gov that you can direct them to. And David said that he would, we can also reach out to him if there's any questions that we're getting. Feel free to reach out to him directly and say, hey, this has come up. What's the best way to kind of deal with that? But before we vote on it, they were looking for some guidance, and Kelly and I talked about it. What we thought we would really do is just, instead of referring it to a committee, just keeping it as the council and just focusing on it at a caucus, because this really is all of us and we should all be involved in this. So to devote a Wednesday caucus to really talking through it and going through it, we thought would be the best idea. But we also wanted to bring it up and see what people's thoughts were, because we can do it through a committee process. But I think from my perspective, I think especially having everybody there, we've had council members involved in every step of the way, including in the initial group that recommended the different like buckets of money. And I think it would be, from my perspective, it would be helpful to have everyone's input and everyone's experiences through the process too. But, you know, we wanted to see what people thought about that. So does anybody have any thoughts? Does that sound like a good way to do it? Okay, so that's what we'll plan to do. When that legislation comes in, we'll introduce it with the plan for everyone to, it'll be discussed in caucus, so it won't go to a committee. Instead, it'll be, you know, it'll be the whole body that discusses it at caucus, with the understanding that we're going to have a chunk of time at that caucus. So, you know, plan ahead, have your snacks, and then we'll vote on it at that following council meeting. So I'm going to have to double check on that timeline. I don't have that in front of me, but that is, I know that the desire is to have that out like by the end of June. So we do have a quick turnaround. There's definitely, and I agree, we want the money is not helping anybody in a bank account. We need to get it out as quickly as possible. So go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, could we, I know you mentioned caucus, could we do a special caucus just to deal with it? And could we do it virtually? You know, you talked about snacks and stuff. It's very convenient to be able to eat at home and not have to travel that extra distance. And, you know, we'd have to do it, of course, before June 8th. So I just thrown that out there.
I don't know that we're going to be, if we're able to, then I think we're absolutely, let me figure out the timeline, because I think that in order to ensure everybody's there, and also to ensure that it's well seen, we, you know, the technology in our chambers is like a bajillion times better than it was. Thank you, Danielle. You are amazing. But it's still not necessarily as like, we just could not, we don't have the technology to be able to do something this clear to really see. So that's absolutely something that I'll flag, and I can bring it up to try to do that, because I think that is, but I'm not sure with timing that it's something that we're going to be able to do. But we'll see what we can do, because yeah, that's a fair request. And
Any
if
other
there's
questions? Nope, just saying, any other questions or comments? No. Is that, Tom, you have a question?
I had another topic, so I didn't know.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, is Jenny finished? I want to make sure.
I am. I'm all done. Thank you.
Yeah. Some time ago, I said that I would look into getting the council pens, and Jack Flynn was calling me several times. I did get the quote. It's the same price as before. It's $292. If you divide that up by 16 members, it's $18.25 each, and it's 6 pens. You know, so the thing is, if I can go ahead and put it on my credit card and order it, but you know, I don't. I'll be honest. We had a gift for somebody, and I put it up, and everybody paid me, and it was, you know.
I'll say
Anyhow.
publicly, I'll split it with you, Tom.
Sure.
And
Okay,
I
I'll go ahead and order.
really appreciate you doing that.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Tom, you got
have
Venmo?
Venmo?
I'll get you my piece. I can
I'll Venmo
my
you.
piece.
Yeah.
Text me your Venmo. I'll get that to you now, so that you don't have to put your money out there beforehand.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's a good idea, actually. Ms. Keegan.
I just wanted to bring up, so DOT is taking public comments for the Livingston Avenue Bridge project, and I was wondering if there is interest in the body in doing a resolution in support of including a walking path with the revamp of the Livingston Avenue Bridge. And if any of you guys are interested, I'll probably connect with Martin Daly, who's been like our local Albany advocate on that project, to get some language. So please get in touch with me and let me know if you would like to co-sponsor that legislation.
I definitely would. And, maybe we should try to get
So would
like,
I.
the biking coalitions and stuff involved.
Yeah, it has to be submitted to DOT by June 15th. I wanted to bring it up now so that I can get everything kind of drafted and together and co-sponsors and language in the hopper, because it probably will have to be introduced by the next caucus, or the next caucus meeting.
Right, and so you want to do a resolution in support of the walking path?
The inclusion of a walking path. So basically, the Livingston Avenue Bridge is like a major connector for rail lines going westward from the Rensselaer Avenue station, and it needs to be redone. It's not really safe any longer, and there's the potential for it to include a pedestrian and/or cycling pathway that would then add another connector between downtown Albany and downtown Rensselaer. And I think it would be wonderful for Albany. It may not be, a gondola, but it would enhance the connection for people in downtown Albany to be able to use multimodal transit to the train station. So I just wanted to, while we're all kind of here on the meeting, just kind of mention that I was going to try and connect with Martin Daly and get some good language on that project from him and get something drafted. And I was just looking to offer for everyone who wants to co-sponsor with me, and then hopefully have something to you guys by our next caucus meeting.
Yeah, and my understanding was that they were including a bike and pedestrian path.
Yeah, they're taking public comments. So I just, I felt like it would be,
that's support. Yeah.
Like good for us to, as a body, to submit one comment to DOT on the project. That's all.
Yeah, what happens, Kelly, a lot with the state, if the expenses are too high, they'll cut it. So let's get our word in there.
Yeah.
This is a great idea. Thank you, Megan. That's
Anything I can do to help you, Megan.
Yeah.
Administratively, I'm happy to.
Yeah, put me down and let me know if something I can do too.
Okay, awesome. So I will connect with Martin, and then I will send you guys out some draft language. And if you guys want to change it, add it, anything else, let me know.
Okay, and so just want to add the Office of the Office of Marijuana for the recreation marijuana from the state had an upstate meeting via Zoom. I want to say the 27th. I was out of town, but they said that, well, the folks that work for that office said they were reaching out to council members and some of the wards or whatever. And I suggested all the wards to try to get folks on that 27th meeting from last month. I don't know how many of you were on it or included. But then also there was a follow-up meeting at the Albany Public Library on May 4th that I did go to. I attended. Councilmember Johnson also attended. They had some interesting information. I think for our part in this, we should really try to figure out how we can support our folks that may be trying to get into this. Again, and Jenny, you works for the state. There's still a lot of things that are undefined and not clear yet. But I developed an understanding of where they're coming from and what they're trying to do. Although it's the state, it's bureaucracy. So I'm going to try with the sponsors and the organizers of that meeting to try to get them to do a meeting for us. And I'm trying to decide if I'll get them to try to get them to come to a caucus or maybe one of our committee meetings to just kind of lay out some of their ideas. I learned a lot. I actually have a copy of the presentation, which I'll get to Ethan and he could share with everyone. It's just a PowerPoint. It's got information in it. It was pretty educational, but it's clear that the state's intent is to to kind of make whole folks of color and do some things along the lines of reparations and the like. But the start that they've gotten off to with these temporary licenses was just abysmal. Folks at the meeting were kind of pissed. Of course, the Robinson family was there. You know, they were impacted here in the city, and I guess out of the first 50 licenses they gave out, only one went to a person of color, and it's so according to, but they're trying to get up to 200 of these temporary licenses, but that first batch that went out, they got off to kind of a weird start, and that is for farmers actually, because they want to build up this stockpile of marijuana for this process, because I guess all the other states that started and did this were behind the 8 ball. They relied on big business to supply it. And you know what comes with that. They want to make money. They created supply issues and the like. So New York is trying to do it differently and allay that and make sure that doesn't happen, to make sure that every level a regular person can actually get into this business and become a part of this process. So I like that, although it's kind of shaky, the start that they're getting off to. But yeah, I think we should hear what they have to say. For our end in this, again, I think it's just trying to figure out how we can support any of our residents that may want to partake in this business and do it that way, because there's really no other way for us to really help them out. But yeah, that's my thoughts from going to that meeting, and it was like a shouting match. It just got out of hand, and there was some crying, and because I mean, if you look at the history around this, the history around farming, and you know, folks of color farming versus you know, other farmers, it's the government actually did some really shady things. So they're trying to counteract that. So I'll try to set something up. I'll work with our staff. Maybe a caucus would be the better place to have them come into. But either way, I did go to that discussion, and actually Mr. Johnson made some pretty good comments at that discussion also. So just so you know, but still a lot of unknowns. That's it. I'll stop talking now. So if we don't have anything else, Ms. Gillespie, you look like you're ready to say something.
No, I was just crossing my fingers and legs that nobody had. No, I'm just messing.
Had another question, right? Yeah, I know. We kind of got stuck there for a minute.
And I apologize if,
No, it's
you know,
important.
I prolonged this, but
No,
that's important.
I can't be silent about things that are troubling. You know, sorry.
Right.
Don't apologize for that.
Right. So if no one has anything else,
Real quick, just want to let you know, I know I'm coming to the Public Safety Committee meeting, but reapportionment is at the same time, so I may be late to Public Safety, just FYI.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pichardo. And welcome back. So again, so yeah. So thank you all. Motion to adjourn if no one else has anything. Mr. Adams, you look like you. Okay, Mr. Adams is second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Good night.